Brandy?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad to have you on the show. So glad to have you on the show today. So I just want you to start off by introducing yourself, and then we'll dive right into the conversation from there.
Awesome. So my name is Brandy Alexandrea. I am a life coach that specializes in helping people heal from childhood trauma, abuse, and limiting beliefs.
Right. So my first question is, tell us a little bit about your personal story, how you got here, why you made it your mission to help people heal from, abuse and trauma.
So I had a very unconventional upbringing. I endured a lot. Whenever I tell people my full story, they're like, "Oh, you should write a book or a movie." But a lot of abuse in different ways from different people, physical, mental, sexual, you name it. And I was always on the go. I always lived in a lot of chaos, and I lived in survival mode. So I never understood how it was affecting me. And I moved out when I was in high school. I finished school. I put myself through college, and I didn't have family support. So I was just living on my own, doing my own thing. And then I got into an accident right after I graduated with my master's degree. Actually, I got hit by a truck while I was riding a bicycle, and it caused me to have PTSD. So basically what that did, and before this, I had never had anxiety, believe it or not. I never had panic attacks, anxiety, social, nothing. I went skydiving, I was social, I did everything. And then after this, I started experiencing all of that in flashbacks, and medication did not work for me. So I had to do it my way. And over the course of about 5 or 6 years, reading a lot of self-help books, going to therapy, I started being vocal about my journey, and people started reaching out to me. And I thought, maybe this is what I like to do. Maybe this is what I'm meant to do, because I realized how much I loved helping people get through their issues that related to me. And that's how I came out with the program.
Right. So tell us a little bit more in depth about your program. What kind of makes your program unique? What is your approach as a coach and, as someone who's trying to help people get over their trauma and heal?
So my program is very science-based. It's based on the concepts of neuroplasticity. The premise that we actually have so much control over our lives and our subconscious that people don't realize. And if you've had a difficult past or childhood or adolescent or abusive relationship, those things are controlling your subconscious and holding you back from the life that you actually want to be living, but in ways that you don't realize. So my program goes through a bunch of non-negotiable aspects of mental health to help you uncover these things and find the roots of them and really just destroy them for good and become who you want to be, not who you want to be.
Sorry about that. So for someone who is just like dealing with, thoughts just coming and coming and coming, they can't seem to just get rid of the negativity, because you said we actually have so much control over the things we think or tell ourselves or what we say. But for someone who's just constantly, it feels like they can't, breathe, they're just suffocating with all of these thoughts. What are some of the steps or approaches that they can take to overcome that?
So a lot of times when people have these rotating thoughts, it's called ruminating. It's when we perseverate on different things. And usually it's because our subconscious mind thinks that it's keeping us safe by worrying about these things. It can also be a learned pattern that people have developed over the course of their lives in order to keep themselves safe. Because a lot of people think, well, if I worry about the worst, then I'll be prepared for it when it happens. But really what they're doing is they're causing a lot of undue stress and rising cortisol levels. So when you're experiencing that, the best way to overcome that in the moment is to stay mindful of what's going on. Separate yourself from your thoughts. Realize that they are just thoughts. They can't hurt you. And once you start using tools like labeling your thoughts, you can go, oh, that's a worry thought. That's a food thought. That's a job thought. You can separate yourself from them and try to slow them down and just start noticing them. And don't be afraid of feeling what your emotions you're having.
Very good point. I love how you said label the thoughts, because I feel like it's almost causing you to recognize, kind of step outside yourself. If you could step outside of your body, right, and recognize, okay, this is that worrying thought that you have about your job, and take a deep breath and analyze the situation rather than just, constantly, like you said, having a panic attack or being anxious about it and just constantly worrying. So from a mental health perspective, like you and your personal story and your personal journey, what exactly did you find that worked the best? That your biggest takeaway out of all of the things that you've studied, that you've learned and like researched yourself and able to get you to where you are today? Because from looking at you, we would not be able to tell, right, that there's all these things that you suffer, but you had to do certain things to get to this point. So if you could kind of narrow down, if maybe you can't think of one big takeaway, but a couple of them to get you to where you are today, what did you have to do? You can kind of break it down for us.
Yeah, so there was a lot of aspects that came into it, and it kind of ties into how I help people when they come talk to me.
Right.
Before I do any kind of introduction to my program, they go through a discovery call with me, and we go over what's holding them back, what might have caused that in the past, and their desired future. So with all that being said, what I realized was a lot of people think that, oh, we all go through different things. It affects us differently. You know, some's worse than others, whatever. Right. But really, all of the traumas that people experience affect us in very similar ways. And those are identity issues, because we end up living lives that aren't really meaningful to us because we do it to be accepted and to be loved. We have self-love issues because we think, oh, well, if I was lovable, subconsciously we think this, if I was lovable, then I wouldn't have been treated that way by the person that was supposed to love me. And so those two things combined, back to your original question, it was a lot of learning not to punish myself. I was punishing myself for my reaction to the pain that I had experienced. And once I released that guilt and that shame from how I was treating myself, and I started really treating myself better with just the self-talk that you do every day subconsciously, like, oh, I'm fat. Oh, they don't like me. You know, like if you turn those around every single time and you go, okay, why am I thinking this? It's not true. What do I want to think instead? And then you start focusing on your desired self and you think, okay, I'm only going to do what that person would do every single moment of every day. Every choice that I make is what that person would make. That was the game changer for me. And then it just helped develop me into this person.
Wow. Wow, so inspiring. So what would you say are some of the common misconceptions, I would say, around maybe whether it's sexual abuse, childhood trauma, just trauma in general, what people kind of think when it comes to mental health? What are some of the common, I guess, myths or misconceptions about like moving on or getting over that you've come to realize and learn?
Yeah, I think people think that, oh, it happened, whatever, I'll move on, you know. That's in the past, but they don't realize that if they don't truly process it and process the effect that it had on their psyche and their self-image, it's going to affect them the rest of their lives. So you have to target it. It's not so much about processing the event, because obviously we can only process that so much and we don't want to keep living in that moment, but we need to focus on, okay, how did it affect me? Who would I be if this didn't happen to me? And then overcoming that to just still become that person, but being even stronger because now we have the tools to get through things that might happen to us.
So right now, I'll give you an example that I feel like something we all can relate to, which is the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
We're going through the pandemic and life is just, you know, just completely out of the ordinary. Everyone's trying to adjust, and a lot of people are finding themselves just really struggling in trying to get through it. So what would you say to people who just feel like the pandemic has happened, like life's just never going to be the same, they have all this extra anxiety and they find themselves worked up? What would you say is like the first thing that they should just stop and do when they find themselves getting anxious and overwhelmed?
Well, a lot of the anxiety from the pandemic is obviously what's going on, you know, all of this crazy virus stuff, the unknowns, the insurrections, like there's been a lot, right? So that is anxiety inducing in itself. But then you take a bunch of people who live these busy lives and just go, and they don't really ever deal with their issues. And then they're forced to sit at home. They have to think about their problems. They have to sit with their emotions because they can't go out and themselves with social interactions and busyness. So that was actually something that I had to work through myself. You know, as a life coach, we're still human. There's still things that we have to work through. And, you know, one thing that can happen is somebody that goes through a lot of abuse as a kid is they can become a perfectionist and like an overachiever because they just become addicted to recognition. So, you just keep finding the next project. It's never good enough. I have to do this now, but you don't even really mean to do it. It's just who you are. So what I would say is just realize that your emotions are safe. They're valid. Find some healthy outlets, really nurture your inner child, picture your inner child self and go, okay, what would that little person need right now to feel okay? Reassure them, talk to yourself, because we're all really just large children.
Right.
We don't heal from these things that we went through as kids, then we just carry those problems into our adulthood. So really just focus on that little person living inside of you, do some self-soothing, and understand that it's okay. Everybody's going through this, but it will pass.
Right.
It's going to be okay in the future, and maybe use this time as a time for healing, because we're never going to get this again. We're never going to get this isolation that we just don't have these other distractions to keep us from growing and moving past our traumas,
Right, absolutely. So for people who may have experienced child abuse, right, like you did, and they find themselves still having to maybe be around their abuser, because maybe it's their mom, it's their dad, it's their uncle, whoever, aunt, cousin, or someone who, and they just can't seem to forgive and move on. What would you say to someone who maybe their dad sexually abused them and it's their father, and they're like, of course it's never going to go away because he's still in their life, but they don't know how to forgive, they don't know how to move on, they don't know how to see past that?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's dealing with something like that?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because the reality is we don't have these lives that we can just drop everything and go and meet all these new people and never talk to them again. Like most people will still contact their family even after things happen.
Right.
So to that extent, I would say explore the concept of generational trauma. And that's actually one part of my program that's very important. So generational trauma is basically pain that is handed down generation to generation. Your grandparents, your great-grandparents, it started somewhere down the line. Your mom, aunt, uncle, sister, brother, whoever did it to you, it didn't start with them, but it can end with you. So whenever, and this is a very advanced enlightenment aspect, but some people might resist this concept, but it's something that was really important to me. But just picture it as whenever you get handed that pain and that instance, that person did that to you, that really was an opportunity to break the cycle, because they handed you the pain because they didn't deal with it, because their generation was taught to be ashamed of their mental health. So they just numb it with drugs, alcohol, busyness, whatever. And then they do it to you. Well, now we get to be the awake generation. We get to say, it's going to stop with me. I'm going to heal it. I'm going to fix it. And then that's really where forgiveness comes into play, because you can picture that person, yes, they are an adult. Yes, they chose to do it to you. And you don't have to forgive them because they deserve it, but you forgive them because you deserve peace. As long as we live with resentment, we live with pain. So we go, okay, I understand why you did this to me. I don't forgive you because you deserve it, but I forgive you because I deserve to have peace, and I understand that it was just pain handed to me. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think generational trauma, it's one of those, I don't want to call it a taboo topic, but when you ask the average person if they were sexually abused or physically abused or emotionally abused by someone close, in their family, I know a lot of times they don't have the courage to come out and, talk about it openly with the person or with their abuser because they're afraid of the backlash. Sometimes I think within families, a lot of people are like, let me keep it within the family, right? Or, we don't want to talk about it. They'd rather just pretend like it never happened. And like you said, it ends up leading to resentment. And a lot of people, hate, maybe they hate their father, they hate their mother, something like that. But then they're taking it out on, the world, just everyday people that they come out with because they haven't dealt with that. So I think what you said is absolutely key. For you, going back to your childhood and those times where you may have been feeling unloved or craving attention or, things of that nature because you weren't getting what you needed as a child, what would you say to yourself back then if you could just think back to when you were experiencing all of that? What conversation would you have had with yourself, excuse me?
Yeah, I understand. I would definitely just tell her, as much as this hurts, and being suicidal at such a young age, and it wasn't that I was suicidal because I really wanted to die. It's just that I wanted the pain to stop. Even as an adult going through PTSD, I think I don't know. I would just tell her that it's going to be worth it, because now I get to live this life that I wouldn't be getting to live if I didn't go through all of that. And in that same breath, you can almost tell your abusers, thank you. Thank you for doing this to me. Thank you for helping me grow and make me go through these things so that I could be the person that I had to be and break this cycle and break this generational curse. It's like, it's a very, it's a long road to get to feeling like this, and I do have contact with some of the people that did those things to me.
Wow.
And it's weird because like we used to have conversations, like you said, where, oh, we don't talk about that.
Right.
But now it's like, okay, I see you. I see your inner child. I understand that little person was hurt and they never got the help that they needed. But now we can help each other because we can move forward with this and just understand what it was and now what it was perceived or felt to be,
Right. Absolutely. You did touch on, you just mentioned that as an adult, you're living with PTSD. Can you enlighten us a little bit about PTSD, and maybe for viewers who may have family members or someone who, thinks they know someone who has PTSD. What is that like? Can you just explain that to us?
Yeah. So I don't deal with it anymore. Thank God. It was very rough to go through. But that was part of my healing process. I had to do that in order to develop the tools that I help people with now. It's not lost on me that it was for a reason. So those times when I had agoraphobia, I was literally scared to leave my apartment. I was scared to eat food that I wasn't allergic to. I even had allergy tests done, but it was just that my mind was trying to tie to things in my past.
Wow.
That happened, but so we're going to avoid that now. We're going to keep you safe.
Wow.
And it's PTSD is hard because literally what happens in a traumatic instance that's super fast or maybe emotionally overwhelming, our brain ties an emotion to it,
right,
as well as the sensory things going on around us whenever that happened. So whenever someone lives with PTSD, they deal with night terrors, situation avoidance, places avoidance, people, food. Just there's so many random things that people don't realize PTSD can be tied to, and they end up being ashamed of that. So what I would say to those people is don't be ashamed for what you're feeling. Your emotions are valid. You're not weak for going through this. Your brain is an organ just like any other organ in your body. It just needs help. And of course, therapy and the tools that I have did help me with PTSD, but the biggest game changer for that was called EMDR. It's eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. And basically it's done in a very safe space with a therapist, and they use this technique that helps your brain process the thing, and you have so many epiphanies. So that was huge for me. So if anybody out there is struggling with PTSD, find an EMDR therapist. It will change your life.
Wow. So for people who have family members, what's the best way that they can help? Like if I have a cousin or something who I know has PTSD, excuse me, how should family members, how can they better support people while they're experiencing that, even if they're going to therapy or, things like that? What can we do?
So if somebody is having a panic attack from a PTSD trigger, first of all, just be with them. Don't try to pull them out of it because it's just going to make them feel more embarrassed. What I would say is just try to make them understand how loved and supported they are. You're there with them. This will pass. I understand you're hurting. Just make them feel like they're not alone, because one of my biggest issues when I had that, I felt so isolated. It was almost like one of those movie scenes where, the camera closes in on the person and the background zooms out. That's how it feels.
Wow.
So, a lot of sensory things can help, like hugging, hand massage, anything to pull them out of their thoughts and back into their body can be a really good game changer for those kind of attacks.
Wow. Do you have any stories that you can share with us from people you've worked with so far who, have been blessed by, your program or anything like that? Any touching stories that you want to share with us, or even another personal story of yours?
Yeah, I've already had a lot of really good success with it. It's making my day every day. you know, whenever I hop on these group calls with them, because my program includes group calls, which they actually have lifetime access to, and we go through what's going on in the program, any wins and like awesome things that are happening, as well as struggles, because we all learn from each other.
Right, absolutely.
We realize that we're not alone in this. Like I said, like we go through different things, but it affects us very similarly. So, you know, I have clients that just tell me, I'm 60 years old and I'm just now being shown the tools that I thought that I had, but I didn't really have them. So that is very humbling for me. I mean, it almost brings me to tears, because it's like, you know, somebody to go through that long living in pain, and like now the things that I'm showing them is helping them move on. Like, that's huge.
Yes.
So, you know, there's that. And then I have a young man in my group who does music, and he's realizing the limiting beliefs that are holding him back, because he didn't really have like an abusive traumatic childhood. Trauma can come in many different forms. It can come in the form of, you know, neglect, or always having to live in survival mode, or always having to fend for yourself, or, you know, being raised in a strict religious environment that makes you feel unworthy. So, you know, there's a lot of things that can cause people to feel this way. So seeing him do his music now and feel unashamed of that, and being confident in his creativity is huge. You know, it's just, there's people that could change the world that are doing this program. You know what I mean? It's just a really cool experience.
Absolutely. I love that. I love the idea of, like you said, having a group call where people can come together and then learn from each other. I think that's really, really key in supporting each other. What would you say to someone who may be feeling like, because we live in a day and age where, you know, we're constantly being influenced, the things we see on social media, on TV, the things we hear. And a lot of people feel like they can't live their truth, right? We're all craving, you know, self-acceptance. The world is telling us to be this way, but we feel this way, just different things like that. And a lot of people end up struggling. What would you say to people who are struggling with, you know, being accepted, or feel like they're scared to live their truth because of the backlash that they'll receive from family members or friends or society? How can they better deal with that?
So everyone that tells you anything about what you're doing, whether it be good, bad, accepting, disapproving, they're mirroring how they would talk to themselves if they were doing what you're doing. So what they tell you is not a true perception of how you're doing in your thing. What it is it's a judgment that they're casting onto you that they would have given themselves. So what I would say to those people is just realize that you are a mirror for everyone else. So if you are putting something into the world, say you're an artist, and you have someone tell you, that's not good, I don't like that. Well, that's what they would tell themselves, because someone in their past told them that what they were doing wasn't good. So they're passing their limiting beliefs onto you. So try to separate your beliefs about yourself and your capabilities from other people's limiting beliefs that they try to give to you. And sometimes there's good intentions behind it. You know, sometimes people are like, oh, I don't think you should do that. You know, you could get rejected. Well, that's just their fear, and they're trying to share it with you to keep you safe, because that's how they keep themselves safe. But really what they're doing is they're keeping themselves from doing what they actually love. You know, so just try to realize that people, even if they have good intentions, they're just showing you what they would tell themselves, you know, and talk to yourself instead.
Right. Right. I think that's very key and very important what you said. And I know a lot of times people find it hard, because when they are receiving that backlash, you have people saying like, well, no, I'm not trying to, like, you know, I'm trying to help you out. I'm not trying to steer you wrong. Or a lot of people throw, I'm just being realistic, right? Maybe you have like somebody who is into music, like you mentioned earlier, or has a dream of, you know, traveling the world and being a singer or an artist or an actor. And then you have people who are like, you know, don't do that, or don't do this career, there's no money in it, or don't do, you know, this, or don't live here. And like you said, is it more so people internalizing other people's self-limitations? Is that what people are doing essentially, is internalizing that? Or how would you explain that? And you said people need to, you know, like, don't basically kind of block that out. But what would you call it, I guess? I'm trying to.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. So yeah, like I think they do internalize other people's fears. And also, we have to remember that if we're asking our childhood friends for advice about a lofty goal and our childhood friends are still doing what they've been doing their whole lives, well, you're a trigger for them because you're making them realize that you're following your dreams and they're not. So, there's that to consider as well. And of course, people have good intentions. They want to keep you safe.
Right.
But also people can be jealous and they don't like facing the fact that they have to overcome some limiting beliefs and fear because it's scary, especially if you've been taught to be ashamed of your emotions.
Yeah.
So, like whenever it comes to just pursuing the things that you want to do and not being afraid of it, you're the only one that has to live with the consequences of your choices, whether that be good or bad. So if someone tells you you shouldn't do that or someone judges you, well, if you don't keep going, you're the one that has to live with the consequence of not keeping on going. So maybe ask yourself or tell yourself, I just want to see what happens if I don't give up. And that was really a big thing that I would tell myself every day in the beginning of this life coaching program, because I had some limiting beliefs to overcome too. And I just kept telling myself, I just want to see what happens if I don't give up.
Right.
And then going back to one of your very first questions about our thoughts, how do we separate ourselves from those thoughts? You can say, okay, well, I have these limiting beliefs, but they're just going to come along with me and watch me succeed, and almost view them as an audience watching you do your things. And eventually they disappear,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my next question for you is, and let's talk a little bit about self-love. I see on Instagram a lot, or on Facebook as well, different posts where people are, always, these beautiful inspirational quotes about practicing self-love. But something that a lot of people struggle with, and we talk about it, we say practice self-love, but as a mental coach, what would you say that looks like? What does practicing self-love look like?
Self-love comes in the form of keeping promises to yourself and keeping healthy boundaries and understanding that you only have so much energy to give and you can't pour from an empty cup. So whenever, people start to do things and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get through it, but they're constantly telling themselves that they're not worth it subconsciously, or they don't feel worthy of the success of it. Well, then they're not going to do the thing in loving ways. They're going to do it in ways that cause them pain and struggle,
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to keep promises to yourself too. You have to show up for yourself. If you were dating someone, for example, you're going on a first date, you're probably going to show up 5 minutes early, look nice, take care of yourself the day leading up to that. But a lot of people don't do that. They don't show themselves love. They don't practice radical self-care. And I think people almost think that they have to suffer in order to be human. They have to, maybe their childhood made them feel that way, that they have to not look good or not feel good in order to be worthy of doing things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree with you 100% on that. So I want to talk about mental health coaching, because there's so many different, so much different opinions and advice, and, everyone coaches differently. So I know you touched on your method, your program a little bit earlier, but can you kind of expand on that, in more detail, about what makes your program so much more unique in a way? Because again, there's so many people who are like, I believe you should do this, right, to heal, and I believe you should do this. But what's your message behind your program, you would say?
So my program is based on multiple things, but two main things. One is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a proven psychological method with different exercises to help you overcome your own thoughts that you don't realize you're having that are holding you back, or you do realize you're having. So there's that, but it's also a 66-day program. And this is because there was a study that came out of London in 2009, and they were trying to figure out how long does motivation last. And what they realized is motivation only lasts 19 days on average. So if somebody starts something, for example, a New Year's workout resolution, and they start going to the gym and they stop after 3 or so weeks, they feel like a failure. So what the study proved is that it actually takes on average 66 days. So I don't think people realize that if they were to have a different way of keeping themselves going for a certain amount of time, and they could create that neural pathway that creates that new habit, which is what makes them into the human they want to be. So the program is based on that. You have the support the whole way through, and it's organized in a way that builds on itself. So it's called the blueprint method because we need a blueprint to build a home. Our mind is our mental home. So you start with the foundation, which is week 0, and then each week after that, the 9 weeks after that, contributes to a different part of mental health that are non-negotiable. Right. And the whole time you're building these healthy habits to become the person you want to be. So it's not a light process. It's very intense, but it's a huge growing experience. And everyone that has done it so far is like, this is genius. Did you come up with this yourself? And I'm like, I did. Thank you very much. I'm very proud of it. Right. But it's everything that was integral in becoming who I wanted to be, despite what I had gone through. So once again, I'm thankful for all the things that I went through because I wouldn't have made this program without it.
Right. Absolutely. This is a question that I'm kind of curious. Do you think in terms of like the school system, do you think that maybe from what you're saying,
90
there
seconds.
should be conversations or even some sort of classes or courses that you would say about mental health? Because I know, I'll just speak from the school that I went to. We always had like, in lower and middle school and upper school, we had a high school counselor or counselors there on site if you needed anything. But I don't feel like I'm drawing from personal experience. I just feel like there's people who go through things like you did at such a young age, but we're not taught about it. And it just seems like it's almost not until we get older that we really start to, understand and comprehend exactly what it is that we're, going through and experiencing and like, oh, this makes sense. This is what I'm feeling. But we're not taught about that in school or in education. I know you said you got your master's. Looking back, do you think it's something that maybe we should start incorporating into school systems, or what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think that mental health should be just as more important as PE, which usually takes precedence over most other things in a school system.
Right.
Schools are quick to spend $2 million building a stadium and investing in their football team, but they don't do anything for kids' health.
Right.
So yes, I absolutely think there should be classes that teach people or kids about, and obviously you would have to do it at a level that they could comprehend because there's certain learning levels to it. But, learning about your brain chemicals, for example, your dopamine, serotonin, endorphin, oxytocin, like learn at a young age how those things affect you and what happens when they go low. Right. Teach kids about generational trauma. Teach them that it's okay to talk about the things that are going on with them internally because, especially boys, they're taught to be ashamed of their emotions. They have to be this tough guy. And really what it does is it suppresses everything. And then eventually when they're like 25, they explode.
Exactly. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of times where, it's just this message that you can't express your emotions as a man because you're going to be seen as weak, or girls aren't going to be attracted to you, or what, just different things like that. And then you kind of find out like, why are certain men like considered to be jerks, or, things like that. And it's just a lot of stuff that they haven't dealt with, which I think is just absurd. But that's why I really admire the things that you're doing to just kind of bring awareness and encourage people. And I love how you're not afraid to speak out. And so my final question for you is, what continues to be your inspiration, your why for speaking out? Because there's a lot of people who have gone through trauma and, they could be like you and done the work, but they don't necessarily, they didn't necessarily choose to pursue it full time or even speak out. Maybe they're still keeping it to themselves. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. That's their choice. But I'm curious for you, what is your why? Why do you continue to speak out and share your personal story?
Because after the things that I felt and how beautiful my life is now, I would never want anyone to feel the way that I felt. And I don't want anyone to ever feel alone. You know, there's a lot of, it's called CPSD, which I don't think is recognized in the United States yet, but it is in the EU. Basically, it's complex PTSD. You know, like we go through these things and like they build on each other. It's almost like whenever somebody's building, you know, like a hut with mud and hay, and it just becomes like this really just clotted up mess.
Right.
And it's very complicated. So I think when people keep it to themselves, they're inherently telling themselves that they should be ashamed of it, because we keep things to ourselves that we're ashamed of. Well, we shouldn't be ashamed of things that someone else did to us.
Right.
We should be ashamed of the things that we've had to react to and had to survive through, and have developed these behaviors and habits just to maintain our lives and be this happy person in front of our friends and family and coworkers.
Right.
You know, so I don't want anyone to ever feel the aloneness that I felt. I want everyone to know that no matter what you went through, you can heal through it, you can grow through it, you can create the life that you want, not the one that you felt like you have to cope with. Yeah. So I think that's my biggest motivating factor, is just knowing like the pain I felt, the pain that people I love have felt, even the people that abused me, you know, I still have love for them. I don't know. I just want everyone to heal it, to stop the cycles.
Right. I love that. And I love how you said heal and like, I love how you said that you're a leader. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say on your Instagram. I love how you said you're a leader and of your tribe, of the people, like you said, who are going through these things, and you don't want them to be alone. Because right from just going off of your Instagram and just, you know, your brand, you get the sense of community. Yeah, you're big on community and like, you know, people going through things together and how you can help people, not just individually, but also collectively as a group. And I think that's very key and very important, and what, you know, separates you as well from a lot of other people. So Brandy, where do we go from here 5 to 10 years from now? What is the future looking like for you? What are your hopes and visions for the future? What do you hope to accomplish?
Oh man, the future is bright. I want to be traveling the world.
Right.
I want to be speeches. I want to host retreats, the Heal and Thrive Tribe retreats.
Right.
I just want this to be a global brand that people know that no matter what, they have a family. Absolutely. Even if they don't talk to the family that technically is their blood, you know, because you know, people bond on the things that they went through. We share these experiences and these enlightenments, and it's almost spiritual, you know?
Right.
It's helping each other get through it and enjoy it while it's here, because life is fast. You know, it's why spend time in pain whenever you could spend time in a community healing and helping other people. You know, it's just it can be a beautiful experience, and that's what I try to show people.
Absolutely. So for just for viewers, so you know, her information is down here at the bottom, her Instagram and Twitter. But I also did want to take a minute for you to let people know if they're listening right now or watching right now, and they do want to get in contact with you to join your program. Can you share with us that process, where they need to go, what they need to do?
Yeah. So if you go to my Instagram, I have a Linktree link in my bio. Or you can just send me a DM. We can always start that way too, but you can schedule a call with me. The first call is free. It's fun. It actually brings a ton of value, because even if I don't think the program's a good fit for you, I'm still going to offer some tools. You know, I've seen life through a lot of different lenses. And I love connecting with people, you know, because it's all a big community, and we don't need to be ashamed of the things that we went through, guys. So if you want to talk to somebody, like I said, the first 60-minute chat is free. Just hit me up, get on my Instagram, schedule a call with me. It's always going to be a good time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brandy, for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure to have you, and you shared such great tools and resources, and I'm sure people will definitely be reaching out to you. And then, of course, if you have any events, or even if it's like, you know, virtual, free, that's open at least to the public, please let me know. I'd love to share it as well and get people involved. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was an honor. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hi, bye, and have a great week.
Bye. You too. Thank you.
No problem. Well, you guys, that does conclude the show for today. I hope you enjoyed our 3 amazing guests. Again, the show was so very important to me because with everything that's been happening between 2020 and 2021, it just feels like we've all been in this constant mode of just trying to survive. And that's why I wanted to bring to you guys Eileen and Brandy and Kevin and Marcy, because they all have different walks of life, but they have these incredible tools and advice and just words to offer you guys on how to survive through, whether it's through trauma, whether it's just reprogramming and changing your mindset on how you view the world and the things you're going through and the challenges. And they're all so inspiring. So I really enjoyed talking to them today. And I'm so excited. If you're just now tuning in, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our show, but don't worry because we will have the interview available to you guys so you can go back and watch it. Please be sure to follow them on their social media to learn more about them. And of course, if you have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to reach out to any of them. They would love to hear from you guys. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I will see you all here next Tuesday at the same time from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Central Time. And of course, I love for you guys to comment and share